Hey, Alli, there's so many changes these days between AI and the GLP-1's. What's going on in the health and fitness wellness space?
Wow, Shawna, so much. And thankfully, we have our guest today who is Mike Hansen, who has over 2 decades of experience looking at and working with bridging the gap between fitness, innovation, technology, and science. And he's going to help us understand what's going on and where we're headed. Let's dive in.
Before we do, let's give a shout out to our listener, Lisa Seneker. Thank you so much for supporting the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast. Now let's dive in.
Welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, where we dive deep into pressing health and fitness issues facing aging women. I'm Alli Kerr.
And I'm Shawna Kaminski. And together we'll bring candid conversations, expert advice, and personal stories that will inspire and empower you on your own wellness journey.
We are super excited to have you here on the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, Mike. Thanks for bringing your wealth and knowledge of experience. How long have you been in the fitness industry? Let's start there.
Professionally since 98. So I guess that actually puts me at 26-ish years.
Yeah.
Combination. So yeah.
So between all three of us, it's been a minute. We've all been working in this industry, and we've all seen a lot of things come and we've seen things go. And you really have a passion and interest in like what's coming. So can you talk to us about what got you interested in looking ahead?
Yeah. So I got started in the fitness industry in the club side of the equation. One day I was like, I got to get a real job. I can't wear sweatpants and a hat the rest of my life. So I left the industry and I actually went to Wall Street and healthcare specific hedge funds, which the reason part of that story is important is I basically discovered my passion. When you leave something you're passionate about, sometimes you realize that passion. So when I came back into the space, and I introduced video games to the space as a way to try to help people move at a time when people were blaming it. And so that opened me to this opportunity where sometimes change is good. And ever since then, I've been a fan of innovation and how can we challenge the status quo to improve things. And my improvement has always been about helping people discover what I discovered, which is the benefit of fitness and health and being able to live a life that you can sort of have self-control of by using these self-care models.
Now, with the video, like what year are we talking about with the video game? Can you speak more to that? Because that's
2000,
definitely still something that's popular.
2005, we started the business. So before Nintendo Wii hit, I got to work on the camera that Microsoft eventually bought for the 3D gesture stuff. I did a game on that in like 2008 before then. So like way early on, I'm talking Dance Dance Revolution days. If you remember that product, we actually used that product as part of a solution to get people moving. We did a research lab at the University of South Florida to actually study the effects of this on kids specifically. And so it's been a while.
Yeah, and you were looking at something who like video games are bad and video games are making our kids become overweight and they're not moving, and you were involved in, well, how can we use this? And before the interview started, we were chatting and you used the term of meeting people where they are. And so talk to me about what that looks like or means for you and how that plays into your work.
Yeah, so there's consumer behavior, right? And consumer behavior is sort of that day-to-day thing that we do, right? And so we have to meet people where they're at. The same thing as it relates with social media. And if somebody's trying to do sales and marketing, right? You got to meet people in their platform of choice. You can't just build this thing and then say they will come. That doesn't happen. You got to go figure out what's happening in their daily life, be able to meet them, and slowly over a period of time bring them to whatever that solution is for that person. And that's the thing that's evolving and changing, where that means I may have had a business 10 years ago where the behavior is very, very different. They're called paradigm shifts. And a paradigm shift is when the consumer's behavior changes and you have to adapt. There's nothing you can do on the business side other than adapt for that. It's like when cars go from gas to electric. That's a paradigm shift, right? And so those opportunities can be the demise of a business or the big opportunity for a new one.
There was some huge paradigm shifts over COVID and the way fitness was delivered, for example. So you've got to really be on top of all the trends.
Very much so. COVID accelerated things in a big, big way in the health and fitness side, right? I think the biggest thing that I talk to people about is the consumer got introduced to new ways of working out. I'm a gym guy. I go to the gym all the time, but now I actually work out at home also. So I call it the fitness buffet consumer. They do a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this, right? There's more slices to the pie to choose from. And that's created a lot of variety and a lot of option for the consumer, which is great. On the business side, some people struggle.
Mm-hmm. And one of let's talk about some of those paradigm shifts. Obviously we talked about working out from home more. What else are you seeing that is shifting? We'll talk about the fitness industry, at the basic level as far as just the business models of fitness centers, fitness businesses, the buffet style. What else do you see affecting the fitness industry or changing that paradigm shift?
Yeah, there's two big things happening in the industry right now, and we obviously AI is affecting every industry, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you've got GLP-1s, right? These
Yeah.
are two big topics of conversations that are happening in the health and fitness space. And
And when we say AI, just to be clear, we're talking about
artificial intelligence.
artificial. And when we say GLP-1s, we're talking about
Talking about semaglutides, Ozempic, Wegovy, a lot of different words being utilized there, but obviously the drug side of the equation.
yeah.
And so what's really happening right now, from my perspective, is the consumer's behavior is shifting from this look good to feel good sort of view. And when you feel good, you look good, right? So it's not that we're moving away from like we don't want to look good. It's just there's this feel good approach that may come ahead of I'm just going to go out there, count my macros, try to get in the best shape. It's a six pack. It's a six pack. It's actually no, how do I feel, right? And ultimately, these drugs are an element of this. It's helping people actually feel better to do some of the things they need to do. And there's a whole thing we can unpack on that side, but that's a huge shift that's happening. Basically, what ChatGPT has done for AI is what GLP-1's is doing for health and fitness and weight loss. It's just brought it to the forefront. And now it's at the center of this. This is going to be the number one, and it already is the number one selling drug in big pharma history.
So, and we will definitely dive into GLP-1s because there's so much to unpack there. What about, let's just at least touch on the AI side before we dive deeper into that. What are you seeing on the AI side that's going to affect fitness more?
It's going to affect fitness in pretty much every area, right? I think in every business, they're going to find an efficiency or an operational efficiency on the back end of how do I use it to execute tasks that I do on a day-to-day basis. And then once the culture sort of gets up to speed on that, we'll start to see that in product. I think the one big thing that we're going to see on the consumer side of the equation is we're going to see AI move into this, what I call first position with the consumer. AI will be able to take in the data from wearables, from any input source, whether it's nutrition, sleep, exercise, and it'll have a better ability to go ahead and tell you what you might want to do for the day or emotionally interact with you to help you make that decision. What that does to the consumer is it highly personalizes whatever that health and fitness journey is for them. And on the business side, you kind of become a servant to whatever that thing recommends, right? When you ask Amazon right now, hey, Amazon, I want this, and they tell you, like with Alexa, it tells you what it wants, right? And so there's a risk on the business side of losing that position with the customer.
Mm. And then with wearables, because wearables have been around now for a little while, there are some pros and cons. What have we seen in the research as far as wearables, the Apple Watches and the things that we have now currently?
Yeah, interestingly enough, and I talked about this recently in some of my content, is wearables are good at the beginning to get you aware, but it's more like maybe the dashboard of your car. Where am I at, right? What happens is when we become so reliant on it, it may tell you something that you might not feel. And so there's more and more people that are divorcing their wearables, right? Because they're like, I feel good today, but it tells me I shouldn't work out, but I want to work out, right? So what do I do, right? And kind of we have that intuitive side of the equation. We want to listen to our voice. So it's almost like they're good until they're bad. But I think it's just like anything. If you overuse something or rely on something too much and you don't sort of have this holistic view, it can be negative for your life.
Yeah, I read one of your articles. That's why I was asking about the wearables, because I read that article. So what with the, okay, let's talk about step counting. How can that be good for people and how can that be bad for people?
Yeah, good question. Actually, I'm going to write an article on step counting, and I don't have all the information, so I can't put it out there, but where this 10,000 steps came up, I think it's obviously good from a goal perspective, right? And it's basically, if I do 10,000 steps, I'm actually moving more than and sort of in line with what I should do. And I think that's really all that is at the end of the day. Actually, step counting came out, I believe, in 1968 in like Japan or something like that. It was some study. Like I said, I'm going to write on it, but it's a good as it relates to a goal. But I don't think there's anything that necessarily says if you do this, it results in this cause and effect. I don't think that's there.
And then as far as people getting like, what does that do to us if we do meet our goal, that goal, or if we don't meet that goal when we're looking at our watch?
Yeah, I mean, it's gratification or lack thereof, right? At the end of the day, I mean, it's in the gamification side of the equation, it's really sort of where it comes in, right? We're sort of motivated by these sticks and carrots in life, right? And so
Yeah.
one of those things that sort of helps with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know, like with my clients, I've seen it can be a good thing, and then it can be, like you said, some people divorce their wearables, and some people can get discouraged if they're not coming close to those, that 10,000 steps goal. And so, yeah, what would you recommend? As far as like working with people, how would you recommend people use wearables?
Like I said, I think wearables sort of give you an insight, potentially into your daily activity in your body, depending on what sort of wearable you're utilizing. And so, just like a car, if you want to know how fast you're going, you got to look at the dashboard. Same thing with your body. If you kind of want to look at how you're doing, you got to look at the dashboard. If you don't have that, then you're kind of guessing, right? Everything's based on feelings. And so I think it's good because when you become aware, that's number one. And number two is like if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Right. So that obviously gives you that measurement. But if it becomes the entire thing that you rely on to make every single decision on, well, there is an element of art and science that mix. And I think you just can't lose that art side of the equation.
Yeah, I would agree because the pendulum goes from I just feel this to my wearable tells me this, but then there's no input into feeling. So it has to settle somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. And it's all numerical based right now. That's why I think that some of the stuff that I've seen, because I've seen some of the AI applications, they can get to, there's an emotional side to this equation, as much as we don't want to believe that within AI. And it potentially can ask the question, how are you feeling today? I feel great, right? And it's looking at data that's on the other side, and maybe it gives you an optionality versus a single don't work out today because you didn't get enough sleep, right? Or you're not fully recovered, because they're reading the HRV, right? So I think that's where that element is going to help soften that for us. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I've seen some of the stuff, and it's pretty.
So it's coming.
It's here.
And data. So it just sounds like we're just going to have so much data. And sometimes that can be good. And then sometimes it's like, how does the consumer even know how to interpret that data? Sometimes that can be, that's just one of the challenges that I've seen, even with just I won't say simple, but just compared to where we're going with the simple data that we have now, it can be, how do I interpret that? And how do I make it fit my world and what's going on with me?
Right. Well, that's why and AI is the term, but there's acts for conversational AI, which are these emotional conversational AIs that people are talking to. So when you layer that over top of the data, you don't have to interpret it. It can be a conversation like we're having here that actually interprets it for you, and you can ask questions about it. And when you can do that whenever, wherever, anytime, anywhere, that's pretty interesting, right? The question is, you still have to do the work, right? So we're still in the business of motivation, and we can only motivate you so far. You still got to put the foot forward.
So for fitness professionals, where do you see I don't know if I should say the modern day or the coming, where do you see fitness professionals fitting into that, or fitness businesses?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's going to be, there's still going to be a need for highly experiential, because when things go in deep technology, there's always these highly experiential opportunities, right? Basically, what happens, in my opinion, is the middle gets squeezed. So you either are a race to the bottom on price, kind of like we've seen in the fitness industry with like Planet Fitness, right? Or you go really up high in your highly experiential community, Equinox, Lifetime Fitness, country clubbish model. The same thing happens as it relates even with trainers, right? This is a time where if you're a really good trainer and a really good coach, and you have this emotional ability and high EQ and have the ability to sort of guide somebody, rise to the top, set your pricing for that specific thing. If not, and you're not that great, then potentially that's an extremely high risk category to be in right now.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Wow. Yeah, I I see exactly what you're saying there.
They call that, there's a term called the barbell economy. And the reason they call it the barbell economy is because it looks like a barbell, right? The middle gets squeezed in this high price, highly experiential market, kind of gets bigger in this low price, utility focused market. And it happens in every market. It happens over time as markets mature. And you look at technology through that lens and it creates a quadrant. And basically, I look at those quads and I go, that's what you want to play in. That's what you don't. This one, get out. Pick one. Right.
And how is the time that you spent on Wall Street, how has that helped you in looking at the fitness industry and the business model of this industry?
Yes, I'm trained in finance and economics. I think anytime you can look at a business through their numbers, it obviously helps, right? So I have this unique ability, whether it's unique to me or I'm just one of some others, is like I can sit here and creatively draw everything out of what I think I'm going to do. And then I can translate that to the numbers because the numbers don't lie. Numbers aren't emotional. They don't talk back to you. They are what they are, right? And so I think it's really just been the number side of the equation and the ability to do research and come up with a thesis that is maybe different than others. Because in my particular work in a hedge fund, we were actually making bets against Wall Street, right? Because technically the market is been already set for pricing on a stock, right? And we're rebuilding the model and saying that's wrong. We actually think it's lower or higher, and we would make our bets that way.
Interesting.
And let's talk about this other, let's call it disruptor, the GLP-1 weight loss drugs or shots or diabetes drugs. And how do you see that already impacting the fitness industry? And then we'll talk about how it's going to continue to impact.
Yeah, lots to unpack here. So I speak on this subject quite a bit on the business side. And I'll be the first one to tell you I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to dive into the science side and how it works, and I can answer most of it. But so long story short is it's actually called anti-obesity medication. They don't like to call it weight loss drugs, but what the moral of the story is the drug has been around for 30 years plus. And initially, when the drug came out, it actually only showed about 2 to 3% reduction in weight loss. It's a side effect drug, no different than Viagra is a side effect drug from heart medication, right? And it happens a lot in big pharma. So they found this opportunity and they started to play with the dosage. And then when they found the dosage, they were able to get up to this 20% weight loss. But the interesting thing and where this is going is weight loss is sort of like been the tip of the spear. But there's all these other benefits into these other disease states, most likely around chronic care management, where you're looking at heart disease, you're even looking at cancer, you've got diabetes, sleep apnea, addictions. And the benefits that are being realized there, which have direct correlation to saving the companies money and insurance money, is really, really big. And so the industry, or Goldman Sachs came out and said there's about 30 million people that would be on this drug in the next 10 years. I actually updated that forecast and I'm at 51.4 million people. The reason why is because none of those forecasts took into account all these other disease states. And the people that will be on these drugs for those disease states probably won't come off, because it's kind of like when you take your heart pills, right? You don't really come off those things, right? These things have benefits. The other thing we're seeing that I think is really interesting is we talk about all this weight loss, but there's this anti-inflammatory side to the drug and this benefit to the immune system that people are realizing, and it's having these additional effects to people. And so I'm seeing nothing but really positive things coming from it right now.
And so and then how does that translate into, because I think it's some people, I think that, I know for me, being in the fitness industry and seeing weight loss, and I know we're not calling it weight loss drug, but in the past, weight loss drugs come and go. And then this, anti-obesity medication, peptide comes out. And you're thinking, is this going to be another one of those things? So you're skeptical about it initially. And then, we do see, I've seen clients go on it. I've seen people come off of it. I've seen some people try it, didn't work for them. I've seen people on it and they're still on it. So, there's these different buckets that we're seeing. And it's still, even though this drug has been around, as far as it being used in this way, is still fairly, fairly new in the last, just few years. And so I think a lot of people in the health and fitness industry can initially at least be either skeptical or maybe fearful of like, what's this going to do to our industry? How's this going to, maybe looking at it as it would have a negative impact on the industry. But I'm not seeing that right now. I mean, I see some positive impacts that it's having on the actual industry. What are you seeing, or what are you looking for forecasting moving forward?
Yeah, so I call it the silver lining in my presentation that I do, and there's really a couple different things that we're seeing. So number one is the insurance has an issue with it on the side of obviously cost. And so
Cost.
most
Hmm.
pharmaceutical companies have this clause called utilization management. And it's where they can actually require other drugs or lifestyle intervention before they give it to you. That only benefits us on the lifestyle side of the equation. So that's number one. So if they can't solve the cost factor, then they can require lifestyle benefit for us. Number two is obviously the lean body mass loss can go as high as 40% compared to a normal 20%, right? And that really has not so much to do with the drug, and it has more to do with the calorie deficit because you're satiating your appetite. But with that, there's obviously protein intake, and there's obviously resistance training that can potentially assist in that. And then on the other side of the equation is there's research that shows people who exercise before the drug and exercise after the drug is doubles. So that's twice as many people basically consuming what we offer, which is exercise, right? So it's 35% to 71% when they're on the drug. And so those are obviously really, really big things. And then what this does, in my opinion, is it allows us to go to what I'll call top of the funnel. You've got a set population that has gym intimidation, and it's rung up to 68%. And it allows them to get more confident. The other side of the equation is, since it's anti-inflammatory, some of the pain reduces. When pain reduces, you start to see results, you get a little bit more confident. And I've always said we need to be in the business of confidence, right? And that allows people to then walk in the door. Because imagine walking in the door, you don't feel good, you're in pain, you feel like people are looking at you. It's like, why would I? And I'm going to pay you money to go there? No thanks, right?
Yeah,
So
I tell my clients there's nothing more motivating than results. And so if you can get that ball rolling, it
yeah.
can lead you to more. So you want more of it. When things are going well, it's like, hey, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a research that came out by a company called Harrison and Company, just in the fitness industry specifically, and on the club side, I believe they said the impact would be an additional $6.7 billion, just in club revenues addition. And I think it's actually higher. So, but we'll see.
Yeah. And then how do we deal with that gym intimidation, that is real and in our industry, especially when the models that we have kind of been built on the past, and this is a new paradigm shift.
Yeah, I mean, I probably have to go back to the question of why are they intimidated, right? So number one, there's a perception, which is sort of what I'll call industry debt. For whatever reason, people still think it's sweatpants and spandex and bodybuilders in there, right? And so that allows this opportunity for new companies to come out, new niches and stuff of that nature to sort of address. And then at the end of the day, I think we've just got to go back to what I said before and meet customers where they're at. What solutions can we give them when they're at home, which is where digital came out, right? And can we use digital to draw them in? What other sort of things can we do that are outside the four walls? I said this to the industry about 10 years ago, and it was a really pivotal point. I said, we need to evolve, and we need to not be a destination, and we need to be a service provider. And service is 24/7. So when somebody wants to consume what we sell, we need to have a solution for that. And I think we need to just continuously push further into that.
Yeah. And so what do you think are some of those services? What do those things look like, especially for the population, which is the majority of our population, which is overweight or and as these medications become more prevalent, may not be overweight, but right now we're still in that category where
Yeah.
the majority is overweight. So
Yeah, I mean, I love the statement, I don't know what I don't know. And so in that situation, for somebody like that, I think there's education that's still required, right? The more educated you are, the better the decision you can make. And obviously, if you don't have that education, you don't know what fitness can do for you, what nutrition can do for you, what supplements can do for you, what a coach can do for you as it relates to helping you improve those results. So there's a remote coaching model, right? You have digital content that can still reach within there. And then there's this world where, for whatever reason, in the overweight and obese population and people who don't want to go to the gym, there's still this natural connection with the healthcare professional. And as an industry, we got to get better with them. And that's a subject that obviously has been talked about for a long time. But it is true. Unfortunately, the two businesses are built on opposing business models. One gets paid when you're sick and one gets paid when you're healthy. That doesn't really align. So from my view, fitness has to go over and be a team member of healthcare and not try to be the total solution.
And what does that look like, Mike?
Yeah, good question. So I've been studying sort of obesity specialty care a little bit more and really trying to understand what they do. And it's a team sport, right? When the traditional doctors only have about 4 hours of training around obesity care, these obesity specialty, which I think the first certification came out in 2012, they look at stress management, they look at behavioral change, they look at nutrition, they look at movement fitness, they look at obesity medication. They have like 5 or 6 different things they do, and it's a whole care package. And so when I looked at that, I go, well, as an industry, we can help with the fitness movement side of the equation, but we shouldn't try to be all of it, right? We should actually try to just go in and join their team. And then that helps bridge the gap because everyone knows lifestyle is a huge part of it.
And what are you seeing as far as movement in that realm? Are we seeing fitness professionals working with medical professionals yet, and where and how?
So I speak on this subject quite a bit, and I don't think we're there yet. I think everyone's in the educational phase of like, well, how do I do that, right? And it's sort of the opportunity here is around that integration. And I've said that for everyone's like GLP-1's. I'm like, in clubs, I was like, well, how do they integrate? Who does what? Who does this? That piece is still being defined. And whether that's a set standard of care, I don't think that's the case. It's probably on a doctor per doctor basis at this stage because we're early stage. And then as we gain traction and as technology comes in to help bridge that gap, then I think we'll start to see somewhat of a standard of care. So what this brings us up to is at the end of the day, we don't even speak the language that a doctor does. So at the end of the day, everybody on that side is talking about metabolic health. And when you go into a gym, how many times do they talk about metabolic health to you? Not much, right? And if you look at what the underlying issue behind obesity, it's metabolic syndrome. And if you look at how many people, it's like over 90% of the population have this problem. And this all leads to these disease states. And so they're talking about how do we improve metabolic health. And over here, we're talking about how do we get fit.
Yeah, definitely need to be speaking the same language.
Yeah. And it all leads back to this. And the interesting thing that I find is that if you're actually metabolically healthy, you have a 90% reduction in heart disease. You have such huge reductions in all these. It all comes back to metabolic health. So I think what'll happen is over a period of time, this will look good to feel good, this whole healthcare to fitness integration, this whole engineered well-being and using science to optimize our body and all this fun stuff is ultimately it's going to require the two industries to figure out. So the opportunity right now is in the integration, how that works, and that's going to evolve over time. That's not like this year, that's over the next few years for sure.
And do you see the fitness industry right now taking that bull by the horns, or do you see the fitness industry right now as looking like we're not joining the party kind of thing? Where do you see us?
Yeah, so I think there's two things going on. So at the top, where we have the Health and Fitness Association, which sort of our governing body of our industry, they're working on trying to further that communication and do that from a policy perspective and sort of up there on the hill. And then on the club side of the equation, I think we have a set of clubs that are still like trying to figure out how do I stay in business. And so you've got this, I need to make more money. It costs me more to get a customer. It costs me more to build a club. My retention's lowering because there's more there's more pieces of the pie in the channel in the pie, right? And so I think those two things have to come together. I think we still have quite a bit of ways to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I even hear like, being on social media, I mean, you hear the kind of the craziest sides of things sometimes if you spend too much time on social media. But one of the things that I'm seeing, and that is kind of a good selling point if you're an influencer right now, in the anti-obesity drug market, is to kind of attack the trainer, or attack the gym. And I think that, we as we know, things evolve, and we've seen trends come and go because we've all been in the industry for so long. And things are changing. People's view of fitness is changing. People's view of fitness professionals, I think, is shifting. And in some cases, it can almost be like the old like you said, the spandex kind of thing. It almost becomes like the joke model now of like oh no, that's hard, and fair, very fair, fair that is one of the things that we that people feel, because people have been intimidated. People have been told things that from fitness people that did not relate to metabolic health, right? And so how do we, as fitness professionals, how do we change that conversation, and how do we become the professionals of this new paradigm shift that we need to become? What do we need to do differently?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I don't think it's the one thing that anybody can do, because I think there's a combination of things that are impacting this. And unfortunately, the brand has been set on the industry in some areas. But in the point where it was coming to my mind is like, if you think about Planet Fitness, because Planet Fitness was kind of the first brand that was kind of like, we accept you. We actually can't, we are against those people. They've got over 18 million members, are the largest valued business in our industry, right? They went after that gym intimidation market. And so depending on where you're sitting as a trainer, kind of depends, whatever umbrella you're under, if you're at a club or whatever other brand, you're kind of got that thing there. So if that's your goal, then go align with the brand or create a brand specifically to that opportunity. That's the only way I could really think about doing it. And then the other side of the equation is probably around education. So like credentialed coaching and health coaching is probably the next area that I would go and get educated and start to play in, getting them more associated with RDs. And this also gets you closer to insurance billing, which is a completely different business model, right? There's codes that can be utilized specifically to help with these sort of preventative care. And that's really the opportunity that I see. Get associated with the right brand, because you're probably not going to change that. If you're still working at Gold's, it is Gold's, right? Even though Gold's isn't necessarily like the bodybuilding mecca at every place, but perceived it probably is. And so education and a brand association.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, things are changing, and we have an opportunity to serve a market that has been really shunned or pushed or has not felt comfortable in the traditional old school, I'll say, kind of gym model. And
Right.
so, yeah, and there are those that, and looking at it, I think it's interesting that I think that goes back to what you were saying about the looking good versus feeling good. That broadens that umbrella when you're looking at, how do I feel good? How do I take care of myself? How do I optimize my health, my wellness, my longevity? Shawna and I work a lot with the 40 and older population, and primarily women. And so, that is longevity and living your best life and being able to be independent, and those kind of things are so important to our market versus just, and again, Shawna and I think we feel like we're fighting that. I want to look good. We've been fighting that for years, and it's a breath of fresh air to start having clients say, you know what, I just want to, I want to be stronger. I want to be able to do stuff. I want to feel good. And so there's some fun shifts, I feel like, that are happening in the industry if we're ready to capture that and dive into it deeper.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that we're just going to see more and more of that, and some of it will be science driven, right? Some of it's like that. I think, and there's this huge opportunity right now, in my opinion, of like understanding your body to then understand how to sort of supplement for those deficiencies, figure out what exactly you need to do as it relates to exercise, the environment, all these different things. There's such an opportunity around that. And with the advancement in science and technology, it's just going to be more and more and more and more and more. So
it's interesting though, because the current kind of gym crowd has to kind of open the doors because they've just been so focused on looking good and shunning those that are just there for like, that maybe don't fit the model. So there has to be a lot of breakdown of barriers and maybe hopefully that's happening now so that it's more inclusive. So it's not just aesthetics, it's overall health.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I mean, I think it's changing in some of the new brands. And like I said, I think even in the old brands, when you want to change, it's sometimes hard to change because you just have this perceived brand perception, right? And so it's a really tough hill to climb to go after some of those opportunities because it just doesn't financially make sense unless you're playing it for the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, what would you suggest to brands that maybe want to let the consumers know that they are open, that they are accepting, that they want to have more people that normally wouldn't come to the gym, that or maybe haven't come to the gym? How do they do that?
Yeah, I'm not going to step over my skis, but I mean, obviously, brand perception has a lot to do with marketing and what you sort of put out there. But I also have this thing that just went in the back of my mind, which was like think back to Victoria's Secret when Victoria's Secret made the change, right? And it tried to make that change, and guess what? It didn't work. It killed the stock, it killed the company as it relates, right? Because they're always known for the angels, and they moved to this more sort of body positive perception, right? And that I don't know if that is because there's a brand perception, right? And then people are like, you're trying to be what you're not, right? And so it's a catch-22. The thing that does work when it comes to like, how do I go ahead and capitalize on the new market is where innovation comes into play. And a lot of times what you do is you actually build a new business. And that's the right way to do some of these things when you go after these markets. It's unfortunately not going to be a great example, but I'm going to still use it. Is when Equinox said, I'm going to get into high volume, high value, low price, all volume, low price, no different than Planet Fitness. They started a business called Blink, right? And you're supposed to do that. Otherwise, because it's hard to take a brand that's up here in this perceived high value and bring it down. And it's the brands that start to do that type of stuff where they try to go from quadrant to quadrant where they usually go out of business because they're known for, they stand for nothing, right? That's the right way to do it. And so when it comes to this opportunity, I kind of think that might be the approach, which is, all right, I want to go after this consumer because it's also how you build product. What does this consumer want? What does the experience look like when I walk in the doors, right? And so then you might have two businesses. And that's okay though, because if you go back and you think of one example that I love, is everyone here, I'm assuming, knows Target. Most women know Target, right? And so that was started by a company, Dayton Hudson, which was one of these huge big box retailers. There was huge ones back in the 1900s. They're the only ones still alive. They started Target and they put themselves out of business and now they own Target. Purposely went ahead and said, this is the market that we think we need to move into. We can't be this huge mass provider to everybody. We need to be this sort of little specialty piece. They started that business, and over time they went out of business, and Target is what it is today. That's traditionally how you try to change those things.
Yeah, because if you build a really strong brand, then you build a really strong brand, and that's what people know you for. Yeah, and when times change and things change, you have to evolve. And some businesses are able to evolve their current model, and I guess it depends on how much it aligns with where things are going, and and then some it has to be a full scale start over kind of thing.
Yeah. If it's a new customer, for sure. A strong partner.
The important thing is that there's going to be a place for everyone, not just the super fit, but more inclusive places for people to land so that overall health is improved.
I really, really like the big box country clubbish community center model, right? You go into some of these cities where there's 100,000, 200,000 square foot facilities with swimming and tennis and all this stuff outdoors, right? I think those facilities will continue to thrive because they are sort of a focal point of a community. And so when you have that focal point of a community, you have the ability to serve the community versus a specific persona, right? That is a community versus a persona. And Gold's Gym had a persona, right? Not a community. And those gyms are probably the right ones to see flourish in these opportunities where they can serve and open up their doors to that because they have many, many things. They're more family oriented, right? I like those opportunities.
Yeah,
and then what do you think about?
as well. So
The
not
social. Mhm.
yeah, the social aspect, because that's what's so important with health and fitness and wellness, because it's not just like go lift this weight, it's the lifestyle aspect. So if you're building a community, that helps build in lifestyle.
Yeah, I like social wellness. I like the social side of obviously the industry. Interestingly enough, the over in Europe, they did a study, and we're probably at the lowest percentage of people that actually go to the gym for community still. They obviously did a poll, and it's obviously over a UK active. But then on the flip side, as we're talking about sort of like anti-aging longevity items here, obviously I did a post on the benefit of sport to age. So if you want to add another 10 years to your life, play tennis.
Tennis, yeah. Yeah, that's all. I read your article. And then you didn't mention pickleball, though. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, it's a paddle sport, so basically
Yeah.
the same notion. I wasn't going to play the pickleball angle since that wasn't what it said in there, but it is what it is, right? But it was
Right.
basically the social side, the strategy side, the team side of the equation, and really the premise of that was to bring play back into the equation. Extremely important part, because sometimes you go to the gym and it's just I'm doing my workout. And if you bring the play aspect, you get strategy, so the mind's working, you do it in a team environment. I think that's the takeaway, is when you incorporate that into your active and daily lifestyle, you're naturally going to extend that runway for yourself.
Mike, if you had a wish for our listeners today, what would it be?
Great question. This probably is just a very high level statement, but I would say open to change as you grow, because whatever that thing is you're doing, just know whatever you're doing is most likely evolving and you should evolve with it. I've been a big proponent of that in business and life. What I do today is very different than what I did 10 years ago, right? And I just sort of stack on top of that in my own personal journey. Like today, I do microdosing for fitness. I never did that before, right? So when I work, I actually don't work more than an hour at a time. I actually do energy expenditure and followed by energy renewal. And I figured out how to optimize my life so I feel really good. So it's not the time I put in, it's the value of that time that I put in, right? So in the mornings, I traditionally don't even take calls before 11 o'clock, because all I'm doing is focused on me and focused on the stuff I'm doing, because I'm at my highest level. And so open to change as you grow, and never stop learning.
Yeah.
We've taken Mike over his time frame. He's going to have to recover after this conversation. Take it down. My wish for our listeners would be to keep playing. I love how you talk about the play, and I think that's so important that we don't outgrow being able to play.
Yeah, and my wish is, I guess it's the same as yours, is look at ways we can do things differently, not the same old, same old.
Thanks for listening. You'll find me, Alli, on Instagram at Alli Kerr Fitness.
And you'll find me, Shawna, on Instagram at Shawna Kaminski. Feel free to pop us a DM with questions and or feedback. If you're enjoying the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, please subscribe and share it with other health-minded women. Ratings and reviews are also much appreciated and help us get our message out to a larger audience.
Until next time, be healthy and be happy.